Okay, got something a little bit different here for the channel this morning. We're about to go into this rather dilapidated barn that's about to fall down, and inside it sits an old Fordson Major Diesel tractor. I did some work at this property a little while ago, and I found this tractor in here, and we were talking to the owner, and fortunately he's got no real interest in selling it because it was his granddad's, I believe, and it's sat in here for, he's pretty sure, 20 years now was the last time it run. He's got a picture of himself on the tractor when he was much younger, and he's pretty sure that was the last time that it moved. So it's been in here for 20 years, and we've got to try and see if it will go to get it out of this barn before the barn comes down in on it, which it probably isn't all that far off of doing. And we're not even entirely convinced that the barn's not leaning on the front of the tractor, and when the tractor moves out, the barn is going to go. So yeah, not sure if we're going to attempt to drive it out, or if we're just going to see if it will at least turn over, and then probably have a little look at winching it out would probably be the better way. And then we're of course nowhere near it if this barn does decide to move. But the tractor itself is actually pretty complete. It's got its registration plate still here. I've checked those online. It's not registered with the DVLA anymore, so it's definitely been in here or on this land, not being used on the road since at least the mid-80s, because that's when DVLA went all digital. So anything that wasn't taxed or MOT'd back then in about 1984, 85 I think it was, dropped off the system completely. So it's obviously been here since then, but he thinks it's probably about 20 odd years since it last drove. But it's all complete. The exhaust is down there. He says that you have to take the exhaust off of the tractor to get it in here, because it will hit the timbers up there before it comes out, because the barn has moved that much. So obviously even back then this barn was leaning quite a bit, but it's all here and it's all pretty intact. We've already had a little quick look at it. We've had some power to the lights and stuff like that. We've had the starter motor spinning, but we couldn't get it to engage the flywheel. But I think now we know what's going on there. So we pulled the ignition switch out because that is absolutely knackered. I have ordered one of those. You can see it's got all of its original gauges. It's all complete. The little hour gauge there says that it's done 29,000 hours at 1150 RPM, I think it is, or 850 RPM. Either one of those. So obviously that doesn't count idle time, but time of actually working and driving about 29,000 hours. That's probably pretty up there for one of these. Definitely he got some use out of it. But what we're going to try and do now is just see if we can bar the engine over. So to do that, we have got to get all the way down here to that little cover. And if we spin that little cover around, we should be able to apparently get to the ring gear on the flywheel. And with a bar, we should be able to see if this old diesel engine turns over still. Everything is free on it. Everything does actually work. Even the primer for the low pressure side of the fuel pumps, it does work. It's got its original injector pump on there. None of the rack or anything is seized. Everything moves. So fingers crossed, it should be okay. It has sat with the hat off the air filter for a number of years. Somebody obviously looked at it and then never put that back on, but I have checked the oil bar filter. It's not full of water. It's still got nice clean oil in it, so it's obviously not been dripping down onto here. The exhaust has been off that whole time, but again, there's no hole directly above it, and there's no sign that water has been running down the inside of these sheets of corrugated iron that are on the roof. So yeah, fingers crossed, we'll see what happens. But yeah, we're just going to see if we can flick that cover off now and see if we can get to that ring gear and see if it'll turn over. Hopefully in there you can see the ring gear, and I've just used a flat-headed screwdriver, and we can bar this engine over so it's not stuck, which is fantastic news. That was definitely by far my worst fear, would be that it was seized, but it most definitely isn't. So let's see if we can get the battery back on it and see if we can get a few bits bypassed and see if we can actually get the starter motor to crank her over. Okay, we've got the ignition switch bypassed. So if we connect the battery now and push down the start lever, the engine should crank over. I've got the fuel shut off pulled and wedged with a screwdriver, so we shouldn't get any fuel going to the actual pump. So she should just spin over. So we are out of gear. Let's see what happens. Did you just see that smoke out the exhaust just then? It just fired. Oh man. What do we do? Do we do it properly? Do we try and drain the fuel system, or do we just see a bit of start? Oh god. Okay, we've got so much crap wrapping around the fan blade. We need to get rid of that. Let's just disconnect the battery just in case the starter motor starts spinning away. We need to get this crap out of here. Okay, I think that's all loose now, and that's all just sort of stuck in the belt. Got a couple of got a bit there that's actually growing through the radiator. That's interesting. It's cut anyway. The fan has cut it. Oh my god. I can't believe that. That was very close to actually just firing up then. Those little puffs of smoke out the exhaust. This will run, without a question of a doubt. This will fire up. But part of me just really thinks that we should probably drain the old diesel out of it and do it properly. But the good news is she turns over with a new ignition key. We'll be able to put all of the instrument cluster back together properly, and we'll be able to actually sit up there and start her as intended. But she does actually turn over. I can't believe that. One more little spin over. Let's bump her over one more time. Starter motor's having a bit of a hissy fit. We're probably not going to read any oil pressure at those speeds. But she will go. She will definitely start. Amazing. Okay, we've decided to drain the old diesel out of it. We disconnected the line at the pump here, and there was no fuel coming out. That was clogged up. So we took the fuel line off up at the stop tap there on the petrol tank, that was clogged too, nothing coming out of there. So we put a little bit of wire through the fuel line, and we do have fuel coming out, but it is pretty rank. It's yellow, to be honest, by the looks of it. So I think we're doing the right thing. Looks like there's a spare fuel filter over there in a box, so we might be able to even put a new filter on it. But I'm pretty confident now that it will go, and these look fairly simple to bleed. Obviously we'll run fuel into the fuel pump from the tank. We can crack that line there and just get it squirting out there. And then we've got 2 bleed screws up here on top of the fuel filter. We'll take out both of those. We'll wait until we get fuel coming out of this one. We'll plug that and then get fuel coming out of that side. And then you've got a line down there into the back of the pump, and there's a bleed screw there on top of the injection pump. We'll take that out, pump it again with the priming handle on the fuel filter, fuel pump, and then we'll should get some fuel come out of there. And then we crack each line, disconnect those, and turn the engine over until we get diesel coming out of there too. And whilst we're doing that, we can check for oil pressure as well on the gauge, assuming the gauge is actually working. But yeah, I think I've made the right decision there. I guess it could be red diesel, but if the tractor hasn't run for 20 years, unless somebody has tried very recently to get it going, which is probably not likely, then yeah, that fuel could be 20 years old. And if it's got water in it, it's not going to do that injection pump any good at all. So it's best not to run it through. And I think we can bleed this. This looks pretty simple, to be honest. It doesn't look too complicated at all. But yeah, I'm fairly certain once we get this bled through, we'll have this old girl running. I think she would have started just then, to be honest, if I had released this stop lever here, which would allow fuel to go to the injectors. It probably would have run. But it's not our tractor, so we should do it. We should do it right. If it was mine, I'd probably have just fired it up. But it's probably not going to have been a good idea. I doubt it would have done that pump any good, and it would have only have run for a little while anyway, because this fuel line was completely clogged. There was nothing coming out of that, so even if it did fire, it would only have run for a few seconds, and then we would have been back at this stage anyway of bleeding it through. So yeah, not too bad. There's about sort of a quarter of a tank of diesel in this tank. We dipped it with a stick, and it doesn't seem to be anything on the bottom of the stick when we pull the stick out, so I don't think there's any real gunk in the tank. I think it's just a case of the old diesel had probably just varnished over at the bottom. But yeah, she's draining now. Everything else looks okay. We're just going to crack that rad cap and see if there's any water in it. I doubt there is. It looks like the drain plug on the other side of the block has been undone, so it looks like it probably got the coolant dropped out of it before it was put away, which would make sense because they probably only use these tractors, to be honest, in the spring and summer times. Probably not much call for it in the winter, so it probably got put in here and got all drained down. But yeah, we're just going to let it pee out now into that bucket, see if any crap comes out at the end, and then go from there.